They told me to stay in my lane and know my place. For years of secret grinding later, I bought the company that employed my biggest critic, and he had no idea his new boss was the cousin he'd laughed at around the dinner table. Have you ever felt that knot in your stomach when someone you love looks at you with disappointment? I'm Marcus Hughes, and for 4 years, I carried a secret that weighed on me daily, a secret worth millions of dollars. My family thought I was just a corporate drone who had settled after a failed attempt at entrepreneurship. But everything changed on Thanksgiving Day last year. I still remember gripping the steering wheel of my new Lamborghini Huracan, the engine purring beneath me as I turned onto my parents' street. My heart was pounding harder than it ever did during investor pitches worth millions. Houses I'd known since childhood passed by in a blur until I reached the familiar driveway where holiday gatherings had always been held. I intentionally revved the engine, a sound so distinct it couldn't be mistaken for anything else. As I pulled to the curb, I watched curtains move and faces appear in windows. The moment had finally arrived. I come from a traditional East Coast family where generational wealth is built through climbing corporate ladders, not risky ventures. I still feel the sting from our 2018 family dinner when I announced my plans to leave Morgan Stanley. My father, banking executive for 30 years, put down his fork and said, "Son, don't throw away a perfectly good career on pipe dreams." My mother's eyes filled with worry. But it was my cousin James who twisted the knife. Tech startups? With your background? Please. Harvard MBAs and coding geniuses start tech companies. Know your lane, Marcus. Everyone nodded in agreement while I sat there, humiliated but quietly resolving to prove them all wrong. In the next 17 minutes, I'll reveal exactly how I went from that soul-crushing dinner to building a $150 million tech company in complete secrecy. You'll discover the specific business strategy that helped me secure our first $1 million client, a strategy I've never shared publicly before. I'll take you behind the scenes of the surreal 3 months when I secretly became my cousin's boss without him knowing. And I'll show you the exact moment when my family's perception of me changed forever, captured on video that day. But most importantly, I'll share the 3 mental frameworks that transformed others' doubt into my greatest competitive advantage. This isn't a revenge story. It's about something much more powerful, becoming unstoppable when no one believes in you. Let me take you back to where it really started. Picture a sterile office in Manhattan's financial district, fluorescent lights humming overhead. That's where I spent 3 years as a financial analyst at Morgan Stanley, respectable job, good salary, soul-crushing routine. During overnight analysis sessions, I started noticing patterns in how enterprise-level companies were using AI for operational efficiency, while small and medium businesses were being left behind because of cost barriers. I began sketching out a platform I called OptiLeap, an AI solution that could deliver 80% of enterprise-level functionality at just 15% of the cost, specifically tailored for businesses with under 500 employees. I was genuinely excited about this idea, which made my family's dismissal even more painful. What hurt most wasn't my father's skepticism. I expected that. It wasn't even my mother asking if I'd thought this through. It was the look they exchanged, a look that said, "Poor Marcus, always dreaming too big." And James, with his perfectly pedigreed MBA, didn't just disagree, he laughed. AI platforms? You barely passed computer science in college. The laughter spread around the table and something inside me hardened. Driving home that night, rain streaking across my windshield, a clarity hit me that I can only describe as transformative. Their approval wasn't just unnecessary, it was irrelevant to my success. More than that, their doubt could become the fuel that would drive me past my own limitations. I made a decision that would shape the next 4 years of my life. I would build my company in absolute secrecy, letting my family believe I remained safely in my corporate role. The next morning, I typed my resignation letter with shaking hands. 2 weeks later, I cleared out my desk, said goodbye to colleagues, and walked out of Morgan Stanley for the last time. But as far as my family knew, nothing had changed. I maintained every aspect of my previous routine, leaving home in press suits, complaining about fictional bosses during Sunday dinners, even creating fake work emails I could check when family was around. My first office was a back corner of the Daily Grind, a coffee shop 8 blocks from my apartment. The barista, Miguel, eventually caught on and started saving the table for me. "Building something big, aren't you?" he'd ask, refreshing my coffee. If only he knew. I downgraded from my luxury apartment to a studio 1/3 the size. I sold my car, cut every non-essential expense, and poured everything into developing the initial OptiLeap prototype. The loneliness was crushing at times. While former colleagues posted vacation photos, I was coding until 2 a.m., surviving on ramen and determination. The worst moments came during family gatherings when Uncle Robert would ask, "Still at that analyst job? When are you getting promoted?" I'd force a smile and say, "Working on it," knowing that I was actually building something that might one day change their perception of what success could look like. 6 months in, my savings were dwindling dangerously low. I had a working prototype, but no investors. I remember one particularly dark night, standing on my apartment balcony, wondering if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. The city lights blurred through tears I wouldn't let fall. I almost called my father to confess everything. Instead, I made one last desperate attempt to find funding, which led me to an event that would change everything. The TechConnect networking event wasn't even on my radar until a former colleague mentioned it in passing. Getting in required connections I didn't have, so I volunteered to help with registration just to get through the door. For 3 hours, I watched founders with polished pitches circulating among investors until my volunteer shift ended. With nothing to lose, I approached Elena Vostok, a legendary angel investor known for her early stake in 3 unicorn startups. I expected to be brushed off immediately. Instead, she listened as I nervously outlined OptiLeap's vision. When I finished, she said something I'll never forget. "Most people here are building slightly better versions of existing products. You're solving a genuine inefficiency in the market." She handed me her card with a note. "Email me your deck. $250,000 if it holds up." I nearly collapsed on the spot. 3 excruciating weeks of due diligence later, the funding hit OptiLeap's account. I celebrated alone in my apartment, dancing around like a madman with no one to share the moment with. That night, I allowed myself to cry, not from sadness, but from vindication. Step 1 was complete. The funding changed everything and nothing. I rented a small office in Brooklyn, deliberately far from any location where I might encounter family connections. I needed a team, but hiring presented a new challenge. I needed exceptional talent who would respect my unusual request for discretion about my identity in the tech community. My first hire was Raj, a back-end developer whose resume had been rejected by larger firms because of his non-traditional background. During the interview, I was honest. I'm operating under unusual circumstances. My family can't know about this company yet. Instead of finding it strange, Raj smiled. My parents still think I work at the accounting firm I quit a year ago. They wanted a son with a stable job. We connected instantly. Next came Alexis, a brilliant UX designer, and Derek, a marketing strategist who believed in OptiLeap enough to take equity over salary. These 3 became not just my team, but my confidants, the only people who knew both Marcus the person and Marcus the founder. We worked inhuman hours in that tiny Brooklyn office, often sleeping on air mattresses between coding sessions. For public-facing events, I adopted a partial disguise, grew a beard, wore glasses, and went by Mark instead of Marcus. It sounds ridiculous now, but the fear of being discovered was overwhelming. There were close calls, ducking into bathrooms at conferences when I spotted family friends, declining speaking opportunities that might have raised our profile, turning away from potential investors with connections to my family's social circle. The breakthrough came 6 months after funding. A regional retail chain with 43 locations was struggling with inventory management across their stores. Their existing system required costly manual oversight, creating significant inefficiencies. We implemented Optileap's AI solution, and within 2 months, their inventory accuracy improved by 28% while reducing labor costs by 22%. The CEO became our biggest advocate, referring us to his entire business network. That first major success created a cascading effect. Within the year, we had 12 clients generating just over $1.3 million in revenue. I celebrated this milestone alone in my apartment with a single glass of champagne, taking a selfie that I couldn't share with anyone. The contrast between my professional triumph and personal isolation was never more stark than in that moment. As we expanded to 15 employees and moved to larger offices, maintaining my secret identity became increasingly complex. I created elaborate systems, separate phone numbers, email addresses, even different credit cards for personal and business expenses. My team respected my privacy, but I could sense their curiosity about why their successful founder lived this strange double life. By our second year, Optileap was valued at $12 million. Industry publications began writing about this innovative AI solution disrupting mid-market operations. I kept physical copies of these articles in a locked drawer, unable to share them with those I cared about most. Meanwhile, at family gatherings, I continued nodding along as relatives advised me about career advancement strategies at the job I no longer had. The irony was almost physically painful at times. By our third year, Optileap had transformed from a speculative startup into an established force in business AI. Our New York headquarters now occupied an entire floor of a Manhattan office building, and we'd opened a development center in Silicon Valley. Our workforce had grown to 50 employees across these locations, serving over 300 client businesses. Annual revenue had surpassed $20 million, and venture capital firms were regularly sending inquiries about potential Series C funding. Our biggest innovation that year was Optileap's adaptive supply chain module, which reduced inventory costs by an average of 34% while increasing fulfillment rates, something previously thought impossible in supply chain management. Harvard Business Review featured our methodology in their technology section, calling it a genuine paradigm shift in how mid-market businesses can compete with enterprise-level corporations. I read the article in my apartment, bursting with pride that I couldn't express to those closest to me. While Optileap flourished, my personal life became increasingly compartmentalized. I purchased a penthouse in Tribeca, but told my family I had found a great rental deal through a work connection. I garaged a Tesla for daily use, but drove a leased Honda to family events. I developed 2 distinct wardrobes, startup casual for my real life, conservative business attire for family gatherings. Even my speech patterns changed depending on which version of myself I was portraying. The social isolation took its toll. Dating became nearly impossible. How could I build an honest relationship while hiding such a fundamental part of my identity? My few genuine friendships were limited to team members who knew my secret. Most painfully, I missed important family moments because of business commitments I couldn't explain. When I missed my grandmother's 80th birthday for an emergency client situation, the disappointment in my mother's voice was unbearable. "Your job isn't everything, Marcus," she said. If only she knew that what I was building might define our family's legacy for generations. The most surreal aspect of this double life was enduring career advice from relatives who had no idea I now managed a company larger than where most of them worked. During our Easter gathering, my uncle cornered me with helpful guidance about asking for a promotion. "You've been at the same level too long, Marcus. You need to be more aggressive." I nodded politely while mentally reviewing the term sheet for a $15 million acquisition we were finalizing that week. The turning point came unexpectedly. During a routine industry analysis, Our business development team flagged that Vertex Solutions, a mid-sized financial services firm where my cousin James had recently been promoted to senior financial advisor, was showing signs of distress following a failed international expansion. Their stock had dropped 47% in 6 months, and industry rumors suggested they were quietly seeking acquisition offers. I still remember staring at that report in disbelief. The universe has a strange sense of humor sometimes. Initially, I had no intention of getting involved. It seemed too personal, too complicated. But our analysis showed that Vertex's core business model was sound. Their troubles stemmed from expansion missteps rather than fundamental flaws. With their established client base and our technology, there was genuine synergistic potential. After 3 sleepless nights debating the ethics and business logic, I presented the acquisition opportunity to our board, deliberately underselling the personal connection. "I'm familiar with their corporate culture through industry contacts," was all I said. After thorough due diligence, they unanimously approved pursuing the acquisition. We established a holding company specifically for this transaction to provide an additional layer of separation between Optileap and Vertex during negotiations. What followed was the most psychologically complex experience of my professional life. Our CFO led the official negotiations while I observed as a strategic advisor. Across the table sat executives from Vertex, including my cousin James, who had been brought in to provide operational insights during the transition. There he was, the same person who had laughed at my entrepreneurial aspirations, now unknowingly negotiating with the company I had built from nothing. During one particularly tense negotiation session, James pushed back on our valuation model. "These projections seem overly optimistic," he argued, looking directly at me without a hint of recognition. I kept my face impassive while presenting counterarguments, all while a voice in my head screamed at the absurdity of the situation. When we eventually agreed on a $35 million acquisition price, a fair value that still represented a significant discount from their pre-crisis worth, I maintained perfect composure while experiencing a complex mixture of professional satisfaction and personal vindication. The acquisition papers were signed on a Thursday afternoon in October. By Friday morning, I had technically become my cousin's employer, though this fact would remain hidden for several more months. Despite the personal history, I ensured our integration plan was based solely on performance metrics. James's department actually showed strong fundamentals despite the company's overall struggles, and I made sure his position remained secure in the new organization. This wasn't about revenge. It was about something far more significant, building something valuable enough to acquire the very institutions that represented the narrow thinking I had rejected. As we integrated Vertex's operations with our systems over the following months, their efficiency metrics improved by 40%, and their client satisfaction scores reached all-time highs. The acquisition wasn't just personally satisfying, it was an objectively successful business decision. As Optileap approached its 4th anniversary, with valuation exceeding $120 million and serious discussions about an IPO, the weight of my secret became increasingly unbearable. 3 factors pushed me toward revelation. First, Forbes had requested an interview for their 30 under 30 feature, which would make anonymity impossible. Second, maintaining the deception had become exhausting, affecting my health and happiness. But most importantly, I realized my motivation had evolved. I no longer needed to prove my family wrong. I wanted to inspire them to think differently about what was possible. I chose Thanksgiving for my revelation for its symbolic resonance. For years earlier, around the same table, they had dismissed my dreams. Now I would show them the reality I had created. For this momentous occasion, I purchased a Lamborghini Huracan in obsidian black, an admittedly theatrical choice, but symbolism mattered for this moment. I also prepared a portfolio with irrefutable evidence of Optileap's success, press coverage, financial statements, and photos of our offices worldwide. I recorded a video diary the night before, capturing my thoughts. "Tomorrow, everything changes," I told the camera. For years of building in silence ends. I'm terrified they'll be angry about the deception, but I hope they'll understand why I needed to do this my way. That night, I barely slept, rehearsing different scenarios in my mind. The drive to my parents' suburban home the next day was surreal. Each familiar landmark triggered memories from childhood, creating a strange continuity between the boy who had left and the man now returning. As I turned onto their street, I felt physically ill with anxiety. I parked directly in front of the house. There was no hiding this entrance. The distinctive engine sound had already drawn attention before I stepped out. I wore my CEO attire, tailored charcoal suit, no tie, confidence in every step, so different from the subdued business casual I usually wore to family events. Through the front window, I could see the gathering inside pause as heads turned toward the sound. My mother emerged first, confusion written across her face as she tried to reconcile the luxury vehicle with her perception of my financial situation. "Marcus? Whose car is this? Are you driving for someone now?" she asked, instinctively creating a narrative that fit her understanding of my capabilities. "It's mine, Mom," I said simply, my voice steadier than expected. My father appeared behind her, followed by aunts, uncles, and cousins, drawn by the commotion. James pushed through with that familiar smirk, ready to deliver some cutting remark, but it faltered as he registered my confidence and the unmistakable key fob in my hand. "There's something I need to tell all of you," I announced, my heart pounding. "I haven't been entirely truthful about my professional life for the past 4 years." I reached into my jacket and handed my business card, CEO and founder, Optileap, to my father. His hands trembled slightly as he read it, confusion clouding his features. "The company that recently acquired Vertex Solutions," I continued, looking directly at James. "That was Optileap, my company. I founded it shortly after leaving Morgan Stanley 4 years ago." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and something I hadn't seen directed at me in years, respect. My father stared at the business card as if it might dissolve between his fingers. Various relatives exchanged glances, trying to process this revelation. James's reaction was the most dramatic. The color drained from his face as the implications hit him. You're behind the acquisition? You're my..." He couldn't even finish the sentence. "Yes," I confirmed. "And I should mention that your department's performance metrics were excellent. Your position is completely secure." The grace in my response seemed to affect him more than any gloating could have. For perhaps the first time, he looked at me with genuine respect. What followed was a flood of questions. How had I managed this? Why had I kept it secret? How successful was the company really? I answered each one honestly, feeling the strange relief of finally aligning my internal and external realities. "I'd like to continue our Thanksgiving celebration at my actual home," I finally said. "There's more to share than we have time for here." The family caravan that followed me to my Tribeca penthouse was a sight I'll never forget. Luxury SUVs and sensible sedans trailing behind a Lamborghini, from suburban normality to the epicenter of success. Their reactions upon entering my actual life were priceless. My cousin Ellie gasped at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Uncle Robert stood speechless before the wall featuring magazine covers and awards. My mother moved slowly through the space, touching things as if to verify their reality, stopping at photos of me with tech luminaries and business leaders she recognized from Televisio. "I don't understand," my father finally said, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Why didn't you tell us?" The question hung in the air as I considered my response. "Because I needed to do this on my terms," I answered truthfully. I needed to build something without expectations or judgments, even well-intentioned ones. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We would have supported you," she insisted. "Would you?" I asked gently. "Or would you have worried every step of the way, suggesting safer alternatives whenever obstacles appeared?" Her silence was answer enough. Over dinner served by the catering team I'd arranged, I shared the full story, the coffee shop beginnings, the fake identity, the near misses, and ultimately, the acquisition that had brought everything full circle. As understanding dawned, I saw something shift in their perception, not just of me, but of what was possible outside their traditional definitions of success. Most surprising was my father's reaction. This man who had built his entire identity around corporate stability placed his hand on mine and said, "I've never been more wrong about anything in my life. What you've accomplished, it's extraordinary." The validation I had once craved so desperately now felt almost unnecessary, yet undeniably sweet. James approached me as the evening wound down. "I deserve whatever grudge you hold," he said quietly. I was arrogant and dismissive. "Actually, I should thank you," I replied. "Your doubt was rocket fuel. Every time I wanted to quit, I remembered your laughter." He nodded slowly. "Well, I guess I report to you now." "Officially." "To the company," I corrected. "And based on your department's performance, we're lucky to have you." The reconciliation wasn't complete, but it had begun, not through apology alone, but through mutual professional respect, which felt more meaningful than any forced sentiment could have been. The revelations of that Thanksgiving fundamentally restructured my family's understanding of success and risk. In the months that followed, I witnessed a remarkable transformation in their attitudes. My younger cousins began speaking openly about entrepreneurial ambitions they'd previously kept hidden. My parents, astonishingly, established a small family investment fund specifically for supporting new ventures within our extended family. More personally, the weight of deception lifted from my shoulders allowed me to reconnect with my authentic self. The compartmentalization I'd maintained for years had exacted a psychological toll I hadn't fully acknowledged. Being able to integrate my personal and professional identities brought a profound sense of wholeness I hadn't experienced since embarking on this journey. Looking back, I've distilled 3 critical lessons from this experience that might help anyone facing doubt from those they care about. First, understand that resistance from loved ones usually comes from care, not malice. My family didn't dismiss my ambitions because they wanted me to fail. They feared watching me struggle. Their caution came from a place of protection, not limitation. Recognizing this allowed me to maintain relationships while still charting my own course. When my nephew recently shared his unconventional career goals, I saw my father bite back his initial cautionary response and instead ask, "How can we help you succeed?" That evolution alone made everything worthwhile. Second, demonstration is more powerful than argument. No amount of theoretical discussion would have convinced my family that my business model was viable. Only tangible results, the actual company, the acquisition, the physical manifestations of success could truly shift their perspective. This principle now guides how OptiLeap approaches client acquisition. We demonstrate value first, rather than just promising it. Our conversion rate has increased 40% since implementing this approach. Third, external doubt can become internal strength when properly channeled. Every dismissive comment became fuel for late-night work sessions. Every skeptical look pushed me to solve problems more creatively. The desire to prove doubters wrong is a powerful short-term motivator, but it must eventually transform into something more sustainable, the desire to prove yourself right. That transition from external to internal validation marked my true arrival as a leader. Today, OptiLeap continues to thrive. We're now valued at over $150 million with offices across 4 countries and nearly 200 employees. We've developed specialized AI solutions for healthcare, education, and nonprofit sectors, extending our mission of democratizing advanced technology. And yes, James now leads our financial strategy department. It turns out his traditional training combined with newfound innovative thinking makes him exceptionally valuable. Perhaps my most meaningful achievement beyond business success is the foundation I've established for entrepreneurs from unsupportive backgrounds. We provide not just funding, but specialized mentorship addressing the unique emotional challenges faced by founders going against family expectations. Watching these founders succeed while maintaining meaningful relationships with skeptical loved ones brings a satisfaction that exceeds any business metric. I want to hear your stories now. Are you building something against the expectations of those around you? Have you felt the weight of others' doubt? Share your experiences in the comments below. Tell me about a time someone dismissed your ambitions and how you're working to prove them wrong, or better yet, how you're proving yourself right. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button for more unfiltered entrepreneurial journeys. And make sure you tap that notification bell, because I'm interviewing family members for their perspective on this story, including James, who has some surprising insights about seeing the acquisition from the other side. Remember, the most powerful validation isn't proving others wrong. It's building something so undeniably valuable that it expands everyone's sense of what's possible. I'm Marcus Hughes, and this is just the beginning of what we can achieve when we have the courage to believe in ourselves, especially when no one else will.